All righty. So I think we are just ready to get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is Gary Paquin. I have on the call with me my brother Tony. Tony is the CEO of the company. Today we're going to give you an executive overview of iRemedy Healthcare and the exciting changes that we're bringing to the medical supply market, in large part due to the support that we're getting from the entire healthcare community out there. So we appreciate that. So Tony, why don't you go ahead and say hello and then we'll get started.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everybody. I will also comment that Gary is just having a little camera problem today, so I will be the only video that we'll be sharing. But he's on full audio and he'll be with us throughout the webinar. So we're going to work our way through this in about 30 minutes and tell the story of all the exciting things that are going on with iRemedy.
Believe me, I'm sparing you by not sharing my video with you. So you get to see Tony, you get to see the iRemedy presentation. The GoToMeeting panel, by the way, is on top right-hand side of your screen. It's got a little orange arrow. You can open it up or you can close it. The other reason you might want to open it up is if at the end of the presentation, if you have a question, you can go down and click on a little area there called questions. When you type that in, I will see that and I'll be able to relay that to Tony. So to get the GoToMeeting panel off the screen, just go ahead and click and that'll disappear from your screen. Once again, thank you for joining us. We're going to share with you a view of iRemedy and iRemedy Healthcare. And our tagline is Smarter Supply Saves Lives. And we saw that in particular happen over the last number of years as we went through the pandemic. It further underscored that the need for what iRemedy does and underscores our mission. And our mission is to deploy the first AI-driven medical supply marketplace that provides price management and transparency for the world's largest catalog delivered by diversified global distributors manufacturers. All that is to say, we wanted to put into a single location a marketplace where you're going to have access to all of the medical supplies that you need in a uniform, easy-to-use system with fair pricing, providing that to the entire healthcare marketplace. And it's sorely needed. This is a $500 billion market. It's $1 trillion worldwide. And it's a market that really has suffered under its own weight of using old technologies and old approach, literally to the point of we still have some clients, believe it or not, that have paper catalogs. Our mission is to drive better prices, better selection, and more reliable sourcing. And the grim reality that we saw over the last couple of years is that global healthcare supply chains failed, and they continue to fail. And when shortages happen, that disrupts healthcare, that costs lives, and so forth. And so this is a serious problem and one that's not going to easily go away unless there's some radical steps taken. So Tony, share with us a little bit just your view and our view of the healthcare supplies market.
Yeah, you know, we all experienced supply shortages over the last couple of years, but honestly, that has been an ongoing problem in the healthcare world for about 20 years. We've worked inside of first the insurance industry, and then for the last 20 years inside of hospitals, doctors' offices, and healthcare systems. And it's just commonplace that drugs will come up short, that there'll be a shortage of devices, or like we saw in the pandemic, PPE, protective equipment. It's a very common problem. It's largely due to the globalization of the medical supply chain. And that is that most of these supplies are manufactured overseas in places like China, in Asia, somewhat in India, and other locations. And then added to that is just the amazing complexity. You know, it's complex. You've got millions of products. They're highly regulated. They have to be manufactured and distributed in a very controlled manner. And when you add all that up, it's just a really, really complicated problem. Now you combine that with it's a large industry. So conservatively, we target about $100 billion as a medical supply market in the United States. And the industry has really suffered over the last 100 years from a lack of price transparency and fairness. You will often hear us say that if you put 100 doctors in a room and you ask them what they pay for a particular item, you might get 100 different answers. It's just the way the industry developed over the last 20 or 30 years, unfortunately. It's unfair and it's very expensive. So there's rampant problems inside the supply industry, inaccurate data, bad product, and shortages. We saw it really highlighted during the pandemic, but as I said, it's been ongoing. Part of the cost problem is just the layers of intermediaries. So you start with a manufacturer, then you have an export firm, and then you have a logistics transport around the world, and then you have an import firm, and then you have a distributor, then you have a dealer, then you have something called a GPO, a group purchase organization. All of that adds layers of costs. So you can easily figure that about 40% of the cost of medical supplies is in those layers of costs. So it's a very inefficient system. And look, let's face it, US healthcare is expensive. And this is part of the reason why, is that we have these very expensive drugs, devices, and supplies.
I was speaking with a physician earlier today, and we were talking exactly about that. There's so much of a challenge being in healthcare today, overwork, seeing more patients, billing problems, and so forth. And to have to get in there and wrestle to find, the best prices and so forth for medical supplies, and to get those as sorely needed, is something that everybody can relate to. And talk to us, Tony, a little bit about what we refer to as supply chain dynamics, because there's some very unique things happening in this world right now.
Yeah, there are. There's a lot happening, in the medical supply chain. So one is that product demand skyrocketed over the last couple of years, but again, that's been an ongoing trend. Partly because of good things and exciting things, a lot of innovation, new products, new devices, new drugs. So in some ways, there's a reason to be optimistic about healthcare. We're curing disease, there's a lot of innovation, a lot of new treatments, but all of that means more supplies, more complexity, biologics, very sophisticated technologies, implants and so forth. So demand continues to grow at just record levels. The other dynamic that everybody's familiar with is that the world of B2B and B2C, obviously consumers buying online started 20 years ago at Amazon. And we have a nexus, a connection to that. But then over the last couple of years, B2B, business to business sales online, is now accelerating at record rates. So these things are really impacting healthcare. The old healthcare system was that there was a sales guy, a salesperson in a car, probably a very nice car, making a very good income and driving, the neighborhoods and calling on doctors' offices and literally bringing, boxes of donuts and free lunch, and then sharing with the doctor the latest drugs or devices or supplies. And that person might make $200,000 a year, Well, that model just is not sustainable. It's just not affordable. And frankly, the doctors and the medical offices don't really want salespeople visiting their offices anymore. They're too busy seeing patients. So, it's a new world in the world of B2B and B2C. Meanwhile, the global supply chain has just gotten more complicated. And there's problems all over the world, China, Malaysia, Asia, there's problems. There's geopolitical problems. There's the war in Ukraine. All of these things are impacting the back end of the supply chain, factories and distributors and logistics. So you add it all up, and it's a very dynamic and changing time in the world of medical supplies.
It's interesting. Tony, I've often had discussion too with the people that we've met in healthcare supply chain over the last number of years. Another phenomenon that's taking place are millennials are now working in doctors' offices and surgery centers and so forth, and they're taking over the purchasing. And millennials are the ones that are dialed into online purchasing. It doesn't make sense for them to go to a catalog or meet with the sales rep that Tony described. They go online. They go, yeah, they're looking for an e-commerce site. They're looking for a B2B site, so forth. That's why iRemedy fits in so well. I'll tell you a little bit about the leadership of our organization and how it's a perfect opportunity of the right people coming together to solve a massive problem. The company is headed up by my brother Tony, who is the CEO of our company. And Tony is a lifelong technologist. He's a healthcare consultant, an author, finished one book's got another super exciting book coming out shortly. In fact, everybody on this call will have access to get that book. So I think everybody's going to find that interesting. Tony is the founder and CEO of Agency One and AMS. That was an insurance software company that we sold to CNA and then grew that to be the largest software company in the insurance industry. He is also the founder and CEO of Medinex. That was a healthcare technology company, and we did an IPO on the NASDAQ. So we did an acquisition as well as an IPO for an exit strategy. Jim Harding is our Chief Technology Officer, and Jim is the former VP of Tech at Amazon. He's literally the guy that built and launched the Amazon Marketplace. When Jim joined Bezos back then, they were an online bookstore. Bezos said, hey, I want to create a new company, a company where we sell millions of products to millions of people. How do we do that? And Jim invented that technology and actually has a patent for that. He has two tech companies that he sold to Amazon. That's how we got to know Bezos. We had one of the first photo sharing apps out there. He is the founder and CTO of Multiscale Health Networks. It was a healthcare technology company. That's how Tony and I met him quite a few years ago. He is a founder of, and the name is wrong, but he is a founder of Seattle Computer Products, which is a company that literally wrote a lot of the code that subsequently became Microsoft. Bill Gates bought the company, and Jim then went on to work and be a key advisor to that company, advisor right to Bill Gates, and actually has a patent with Paul Allen too. So Jim has an amazing background and has brought that between Tony and Jim. I think we've got the top two technologists in the industry to solve a very, very big problem. So Tony, describe to us a little bit about what is a hyper marketplace.
You know, it's interesting because Jim really is one of the, original architects of the whole idea of a marketplace. And by the way, when he created the reseller marketplace at Amazon, and to your point, Gary, he filed the patent on that for Amazon on behalf of Amazon and built that for Amazon when he was VP of Tech there. So he's one of the early thinkers in the world of marketplace. And he did that there to solve the catalog problem, which is interesting because, decades later, we had to solve a catalog problem at iRemedy that it was unique and complex because of the nature of healthcare. One of the points that Jim and I often make is that in many ways, the e-commerce world, really hadn't evolved much over the last 20 years. E-commerce technology got a little faster, got a little nicer, solved some problems, but there really wasn't a major revolution, next generation, if you will, of e-commerce. The healthcare product problem was so unique. When Jim and I discussed this many years ago, I went to him as a friend and said, hey, Jim, I'm working on this idea. What do you think? Because I knew he was one of the leading thinkers in the world on this subject. He ended up quitting what he was doing and joining us full time to try and solve the catalog problem. And what we agreed was we needed to use the most current technology out there to solve the complex supply chain problems of healthcare, to the point where we actually went out and created our own, not only proprietary, but AI-driven technology. We filed now I think we're at about 14 patents. I know there was some recent update on our patent activity over the last couple of days. But we had to create completely new technologies. Kind of did AI before AI was cool in order to solve this complex situation inside of healthcare. So what we've created is what we refer to as a hyper marketplace. It brings in state-of-the-art automation, not just in the e-commerce experience, which is very important, but also in the back end of the operations of that marketplace. So our technology will not only automatically maintain this massive catalog and improve the quality and the size and the quality of the catalog automatically using our digital agents. But these digital agents will also place orders and manage the back end of the marketplace. So it's a total enterprise application that is essentially being run by the various hundreds or thousands of digital agents that we've built by this technology that we've invented.
So it's an interesting and exciting development as we work with all of our customers, as Tony had mentioned, everything from private sector, doctors' offices, up to surgery centers, so forth, to the government. We're finding new opportunities of major problems that need to be solved, and we could spend an entire webinar and session just on that, and problems that we've run into with the U.S. government and supply chain and the strategic national stockpile and so forth. Suffice it to say, there's a lot of room for improvement, and we're able to apply a lot of this technology in that world. So let's talk about the actual AI-powered supply chain. Tony, if you could kind of walk us through this technology and what that means.
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, there's unique problems inside of healthcare in terms of managing a catalog. It mainly has to do with you have to have absolute information about that product, where it came from, and you have to know it throughout the entire supply chain. We often refer to that as we need to know the provenance of that product. We need to know where it came from. If you sell a counterfeit pair of sunglasses on Amazon, happens every day, I would assume, yeah, that's unfortunate, but nobody's going to die as a result. When you're in healthcare, you can't afford to make those mistakes. So you have this very complex problem. Additionally, there's these sort of complicated contracting and pricing problems. I referred to it earlier when I said 100 doctors and 100 different prices. Well, extrapolate that to there's really 500,000 doctors, and they buy tens of thousands and ultimately millions of products. So you end up with billions of data points. It becomes very complicated. So what we did is we created this AI-powered supply chain management system. And the first step was this proprietary technology that automates and scales the entire marketplace. It did that by effectively turning the internet into a global database, allowing us to automatically retrieve data from anywhere in the world and then normalize that data. So this is phenomenal, the access that we have to the hundreds of millions of computers that exist around the world. And we do that without APIs. It's literally done through this AI-driven process engineering, digital agents that we've created. And as a result, we use that technology to create what we refer to as the UHMPC, the Universal Health and Medical Products Catalog. The dream, the goal, the vision of the UHMPC is to have all information on all products as it relates to healthcare available anywhere in the world. Now, that'd be a ridiculous vision or idea to even conceive 10 years ago. But today, with the tools that are available, it's something that we can actually pursue and visualize and achieve in many ways. And that's what we're set out to do with this automated, AI-driven technology. As a result, we've got about 500,000 products available now, and we're growing. We're targeting to have about 1 million by the end of the year, and then multiple millions of products of data available on those products as we go into 2024. The way it works is iRemedy has these technology agents, digital agents, that go out and automatically maintain pricing and availability, processing orders from clients and suppliers, and then tracking and reporting on supply chain details. So that gives us the scale. Rather than trying to deploy 100 people or 200 people, whatever the case might be, we can deploy thousands of agents and do it at virtually no cost. As a result, we're highly scalable. We can process, virtually unlimited numbers of orders because we simply would scale more of our digital agents to do that processing for us. So it's these combination of digital agents and AI-driven technologies protected by our intellectual property licenses and underlying patents that give us this ability to go out and automate this complex medical supply chain.
And you can see why that's important. If our mission is to solve fair, transparent, immense product selection for healthcare professionals in America, that's a tall order. And there's a lot of suppliers out there, traditional suppliers everybody's familiar with. But to be able to take all of that information, which by the way is different by every vendor, and put that into a single system that real-time monitors the availability and pricing of all those products has never been done before because technology didn't exist to be able to do that. Tony, if you could share a little bit with us of our efforts with the US government and specifically what we've done with them in the last couple of years.
Absolutely. So, as I mentioned early on, really the problem of healthcare medical supply chain has to do with globalization. We really don't make hardly any drugs, devices, or supplies here in the United States. I mean, literally, probably less than 5% of what we need is made domestically. So there's a huge problem because not only is it just complex to manage globally, FDA oversight, logistics, supply chain, the normal things that you deal with in any supply chain. Now you've got the added problem of geopolitical conflict. Is China our ally or are they our opponent on the world stage? What about Russia and Ukraine and India? All these things come into play now that really have made this problem much more serious. iRemedy during the pandemic was able to use our technology and solve a major problem for the government. That problem was they needed needles and syringes for the vaccination program. You wouldn't have thought that. You would think that would be readily available, but it wasn't, not even remotely. The only place you could get needles and syringes at that level was in fact in China, and our technology in essence knew that. So we were able to leverage our information and relationships and ended up securing a number of contracts. In the end, we imported about 1.2 billion, with a B, billion needles and syringes for Operation Warp Speed. In fact, we were told it was the largest airlift of medical supplies in the modern history of the country. I think we ended up flying about 150 747s to get that job done. As a result, one, we established a reputation and relationship with the government that we could perform, but also we really became sensitized to the problem and created a passion. And now we're working alongside many other industry leaders and people inside the government on the need to reshore or onshore or domesticate the medical supply industry. And so we are really positioning iRemedy as a go-to-market solution using our technology platform to assist these new manufacturers that are being created here in the United States. They're creating modern factories with modern solutions, and now they need a modern way to get their products to the marketplace. And ultimately, it's part of our vision and passion that will be an important part of that process, working with those companies and in delivering those products to the government. The United States government does provide these products in the middle of things like a pandemic, but you have to remember, they're also one of, if not the largest healthcare providers in the United States, because of the VA, for example. I believe the number is they provide health care for about 40 million Americans. That is veterans and their family members spread all across the United States. So they're a huge consumer of medical supplies and an important part of the iRemedy strategy going forward.
We're participating in a group called SAMS, which is Securing America's Medicine and Supply. Very involved with them. As Tony said, there's going to be efforts made to reshore or to bring onto friendly shores more medical supplies. As everybody knows on the call, worldwide, geopolitically, we're in a very dynamic era right now. So it's going to be important to secure America's medical supplies, and iRemedy is front and center and is very actively involved in that. Tony, describe in some detail, if you could, the difference in what the UHMP strategy is, both from a directory standpoint as well as a marketplace catalog.
Absolutely. This is a little bit unique. That's something we're doing that, again, I mentioned earlier that the marketplace concept hadn't evolved much over the last 20 years. Well, here's an example of a way that we're doing a new generation of marketplace thinking. So on the one hand, and that's on the right-hand side of this slide, our goal is to have really the best medical products marketplace on the internet, period, without any qualification. That's the goal, and that's what we'll do is we'll have the largest in terms of number of products, the most comprehensive in terms of information, and making it fairly accessible to everybody that needs it. And so we make that statement as an example, a better medical products marketplace than Amazon. But I would add to that other major name distributors that are in the healthcare space. But secondly is we're also delivering a version of that UHMPC, the Universal Health and Medical Products Catalog, that will simply be for information purposes. And you see our tagline about smarter supply saves lives. Well, really, we just want to build data. There's a great opportunity. There's a massive shortage of information. Right up to the White House and the U.S. government, and I know this because I've had conference calls with them, but HHS, the Department of Defense, major industry leaders, nobody really has information about the medical supply chain status in the United States, or really an overview of all products. So for the government, for researchers, for pharmaceutical companies, and on into large healthcare providers and hospitals and GPOs and distributors, there actually is tremendous value in a massive catalog solution. So we'll have data not just on the products that we're selling, but there may be millions of products that we don't sell. Maybe we're not able to sell. Maybe they're not available in this country. Maybe they're direct sold by a manufacturer, or for some other reason, we're just not able to distribute those products. We will still have the data on those products and make it available to the marketplace.
It's something that's very, very important. It's interesting when you think about it from a consumer's, from a professional or my perspective as an example. As I go to online, I go to Google and I type in something and I search for it. It'd be a car, or it could be a medical product, or whatever the case might be. And the search results that you get are skewed based upon advertising and keyword searches and how people, kind of fix their searches so that they come up to the top of the search area. Well, in the world of medical supply, to Tony's point, when you've got millions of products worldwide, to be able to have a definitive source to find those products, bring them to a directory, we think is going to be revolutionary. So in summary, we believe that the UHMPC is the largest and smartest medical products catalog on the internet in the world. And we've developed a highly proprietary technology by the creator of Amazon's marketplace. And Jim, by the way, believes this is more significant than the technology that he developed there. So that's quite a statement. Our team has had a track record of successful exits, liquidity events, including acquisitions as well as a NASDAQ IPO. Our revenue exceeded 50 million in 2022. We've got our eye on about 70 million in 2023. But this is an immensely large market. It's a $100 billion market. So when we take the company to the next level, be it an IPO as an example, we want to be one of those companies that really has nothing but skyrocketing growth as we go along, because it's a very, very big industry and there's a lot of room for expansion. I do want to mention also that we've got a tech talk that's been recorded with Jim and Tony. It's featured on YouTube. After this presentation today, I'll send that out to everyone so you have a link to it. You can either watch it on YouTube or you can link to it on GoToMeeting and watch it at your convenience. And for those who are technically inclined or know people who are technically inclined, I think you'll get a lot out of this. So it's quite a fascinating discussion. It almost reaches into the area of philosophy of what does it mean about AI and what is this new world that we're moving into? And is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? And Tony and Jim had a talk about a week ago that was probably one of the most successful meetings that we've ever had online. So that was fantastic. So I want to thank you for joining today, and I'll just pop open and see if there's any questions that came in. Also, you'll have an opportunity. Let's see, I can't hear anything. Do you have a connection problem? No, unfortunately, we don't have a connection problem. Hopefully, everybody else online was able to hear us. They stayed for the duration of the webinar, so hopefully we came through. Once again, a copy of this is available from recording, so I'll let everybody know that. And then when you exit the webinar today, there'll be a quick survey will pop up. If you have any questions that you'd like to just fill that survey out, take 2 seconds. I will see that and we'll respond to you as soon as we get that. So once again, thanks, Tony, and thanks to everybody for joining us. Loved having you on this presentation. I hope spring has sprung in your part of the world. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.